All right, let me bring in now Michael Bosterque. He is a global affairs analyst and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. He is in Kyiv. Good to see you, Michael. I do want to ask you about Navalny in a moment, but first let's begin with Ukraine and President Biden now laying blame on U.S. Congress for the fall of Avdiivka. Is that a stretch or a legitimate claim?
Good to be with you, Fredericka. I think it's a legitimate claim because we're already getting credible reports from the front lines of Ukrainian troops having to ration explosive charges, of having to ration munitions. So they just don't have the muscle, the firepower that they once used to repel Russian forces. The other thing, of course, that's happening is they're being vastly outnumbered. And as President Zelensky said, the Ukrainians do not have the ability to control the skies above them. Hence, they can't bring down Russian warplanes or missiles. So absolutely, there's a direct connection. And a lot of people hope that U.S. lawmakers will look at themselves in the mirror and think twice about what they're about to do, I guess, in a couple of weeks.
You're there in Kyiv. Is there a growing concern that Ukraine could lose this war?
You know, it's heartbreaking. I have Maidan Square right behind me, and today there were two peaceful marches, but the first one was mothers and daughters and sons of soldiers held in Russian captivity, saying it's time to bring them home. And there are hundreds, if not more, of Ukrainians in Russian captivity. We hear reports of them being put through sham trials, of them being tortured. So that kind of pain, that sense of loss is reverberating throughout Ukraine. One more thing, Fredericka, also talking to contacts here on the ground, there are fears that in a month or so from now, women for the first time may be mobilized in certain professions, but that's a pretty big step.
Oh, that's a huge step. Indeed. Ukraine's President Zelensky, he was in Munich for the Global Security Conference this weekend, and he's warned his allies that Putin would only be stopped by an ongoing show of unity. What do you believe Putin is watching for now? Because he's always reading the signals and trying to strategize how it will best suit him. When he hears that from Zelensky, when he hears the comments from President Biden, what does that fuel him to do or position him to do?
Yeah, it's always difficult to get into the twisted mind of Mr. Putin. But, you know, Fredericka, thugs and con men, they only respond to one thing. That is to fear and a show of force. And I really didn't get that sense coming out of the Munich Security Conference that there is the unity that one needs right now. And there was talk again of sanctions. Well, I'm sorry, but the Russian economy has been pretty impervious to many, many sanctions. I think what needs to happen right away that they can do quickly is to put into motion the billions that are frozen in Russian sovereign funds. And that money in the interim can go to Ukraine to pay for the war, but also things like pensions and teachers' salaries. But I think Mr. Putin is trying to run down the clock here until someone like a Mr. Trump gets in and does an art of the deal on their own terms.
Impervious to sanctions. And then as applies to Navalny's death and the blame being placed directly on Vladimir Putin by the president, U.S. president, and others. Now the widow of Alexei Navalny, she's posted a picture of the two of them on Instagram. Friday, she attended the Global Security Conference in Munich and tried to get their attention. She made a very moving speech about her husband. Inside Russia, we're seeing people being arrested for attending rallies and vigils, paying homage to Navalny. So how much attention are everyday Russians paying to his death? How much are they using that as a barometer for their own fear or livelihoods?
Well, you know, you couldn't ask for a bigger contrast. As Matthew was just reporting in Russia, there are arrests happening of people who just show up or at the wrong place at the wrong time near a place where Navalny is being commemorated. Whereas here, there were hundreds of peaceful marchers. There was hardly a policeman in sight. And that's what Ukrainians want to retain. That's what they want the Russians to see, that this is what a democracy really looks like. You know, inside Russia, it's so sad. I mean, many Russians, as you know, have left, many talented ones. And, you know, it must be so difficult on Mrs. Navalny right now because, she has to also think about what her return to Russia may mean. Will she meet the same fate of her husband, her late husband, because she is expected to take up the mantle now, I think. So it's a very difficult situation. But one more quick thing is that Ukrainians are going to keep on fighting because they know that if Russia occupies Ukraine, they're going to be under the same repressive boot as people in Russia are facing today and for the many years in the past.
Michael Bursicu, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking to you, joining us today from Kyiv. Thank you.
My pleasure.